Close. It looks like it's already recorded. So close this. Okay. Now, how can we make this image a little bit sexier? Just like this. Well, like this. I guess this is just the way it's got to be. Okay. I'll put it back a little bit so we get more. So that my Moroccan audience isn't confused, sexier is now used in the world of technology as well as anything else. It's not connected to anything sensual, right? So if we talk about, for example, sexing something up, it just means making something more exciting. So there's your English lesson for today, and you're welcome. Let's go ahead and start. Okay, squeeze in. Come on. Makes it more intense. Come on.
Then I would like to, I get to know that you went to the States or Canada for on training.
What? Go ahead, say it one more time.
You went on training.
Where did I go?
I think you went to the States.
Canada. I went to Toronto?
Yeah.
Okay, if you say so.
So,
yes.
What were you doing there?
That's an excellent question. What if I choose not to answer that?
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't give us any clue to get along with the competition.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's make sure that this doesn't fade off. What was I doing? I was there for professional development. Right? I was sent as a representative, I suppose, of the American Language Center, because 2 teachers were chosen, myself and Abdurrahim. And the reason for that is because only 2 teachers were chosen for the Meknes conference.
Okay.
So most likely, if 3 teachers had been chosen for the Meknes conference, I would not have been sent to Toronto. I would have come in 3rd place. But as there was only a 1st and 2nd place, they had to send me.
Yeah.
So what was that about? Just give us an idea.
What was what about?
The Toronto thing.
The Toronto thing. Okay. Well, TESOL is a huge conference. 6,000 teachers were there from all over the world, including administrators. And the idea is that it's almost like the Musam of Sidi Ali bin Hattush. You have about 1,000 different tents. You know, in each tent maybe there's Ganawa or Barqawi or Isnawa, and you can choose from going from tent to tent what flavor of jadab you're going to go into, you know, what kind of trance you're into. That would be my first answer. It is there to make teachers better teachers.
Mm-hmm. So what did you learn, sir?
Oh, a lot of things.
Like?
Oh, so many things.
Give us one.
Wow. This is really good. Okay, you're serious?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the first lecture that I attended, the first workshop that I sat in, was on research. So, in order to show you what I learned, I might ask you quickly, what is research? What would you call research?
Research is, for example, as a student, for example, you move from what is theoretical to what is practical, for example. You go out and do research about a certain phenomenon. Or if you are given a topic, then you do research about it. I mean, you go look for some pieces of information about that.
Okay, sure. So an example of theory to practice could just be as simple as I show up at work, I see that there are students in the back of my room, you know, if this is my classroom, and I'm here, that simply moving here causes them to speak less L1 and more L2, right? All I have to do is position myself here. So I try it in another classroom. Let's say this is my advanced 5 classroom, and I try it, say, in my juniors 9 classroom. And if it works again, I am performing some kind of research. I am doing research. Yes, I haven't published a paper. No, I don't have a PhD in anything except bullshitology. And that's it. We've just screwed up our whole video. But that counts as research.
Yeah. So what techniques that you learned there, like to teach? The best ones. Best ones.
Okay, so now we're going from the research bit to teaching, okay, because those are 2 different things. You know, we didn't really learn about teaching at the research workshop, unless you consider that you will become a better teacher if you're doing research.
Okay.
Right? Now, if you're going to class and you simply just show up with your lesson plan, right, your LP, and you do your lesson plan from start to finish, and you don't make any observations about your class, that can't be considered research. I mean, you haven't done anything except teach that day. If you make observations about your class, and then you act on those observations, you test them, you're doing research.
Yeah. So we can consider that research is one technique of teaching. Maybe
I think it's probably going to be a quality or something that any talented teacher is going to be doing. And most teachers are doing some primitive form of research anyway. I come to class, I look angry, everybody tells me I'm angry, I write down in my diary, dear diary, everyone thinks I'm angry, my students hate me because I'm angry, and then you try it, you know, being a little bit nicer the next day.
Yeah.
You know, or you just move to a public school where they expect you to be angry. But either way, you act you act on your observation. That's research. So most people do that if they want to keep their jobs. They're doing some form of research, right? Because the guy who doesn't change his behavior ever, he's going to lose his job or become a professional wrestler.
So, like, still talking about this idea of research as a teacher, what difference, Jamal, is there between qualitative and quantitative research?
Wow, that's an excellent question. I really hope you have the answer to that. It's why it's so good that, okay, yeah, they talked about that. They talked about that as well. They did it through a cartoon, and I think somebody said something like, you know, you scored 2 home runs. They're talking to a baseball player. You scored 2 home runs between the years of 1985 to 2005. And then this year, you scored 5. Just this year. What's the difference? And the guy's like, the difference is 3. He's counting like the difference between 2 home runs and 3. Qualitative versus quantitative research, right? And then we all laughed because we're supposed to laugh at the conference, and not say, okay, right, and let's move on. That's the kind of thing that you have to look at. For example, we could say that 6 students are capable of only using L2 when in the presence of a monitor. They stop using L1. But does this prove, you can say this is quality research here, you know, this proves what it proves. On the other hand, could we test this out on a class of 30 and get the same results? You know, the chances are probably not. You know, it only proves what it does with the amount of people that you have. And that would be an example.
Yeah, like for example, like the difference between, for example, quantitative and qualitative research is that Qualitative.
Okay, you were going to tell me. Yeah. You were going to tell me. I was guessing, but now I'll find out what the answer is. Okay.
Qualitative research has to do with numbers and figures, for example, like in science. They analyze figures.
Quantitative.
That's qualitative.
No, quantitative has to do with numbers. Okay. I think it's time for you to stop asking. To put a bat on your
Quantitative is because
Yes.
the quantity is number and qualitative the quality.
Yeah.
My research
Yes.
paper was about qualitative and quantitative data.
Yeah, could you just forget he said what he said? Because
Okay. One has to do with arguments, one has to do with figures and numbers.
yes. Yes. Yeah, I'll write that down.
So what was your feedback?
For the research workshop, that wasn't the only thing that I attended. That was just the first, the very first day that I was there. Most of the workshops were ticketed on the very first day. They were very expensive ones, and I didn't go to any of those. And then on the second day, they kind of opened it up to the average teacher, right? And so that's when I went to the research workshop. My feedback regarding that workshop was that it was good because we had some opportunities to ask each other questions like, what's the difference between a number and a quality? And then at the same time, it did seem a bit disorganized and directionless at points. I could have been wrong. I could have thought, maybe it was that I was thinking we would have more opportunities to do some research, for a 4-hour workshop, I thought maybe we would leave having done some research.
What you have learned there? I mean, in Western context, for example, how would that help you this year? And do you think that what you have learned there would apply to this different context, or is it the same thing?
Especially for Moroccan students.
Sure. Well, there's something that I picked up, and that was just from reading a book. It wasn't from a lecture, but it was a book that I read at the conference. The same guy who puts together our interchange books, Jack C. Richards, in the book, he says that all of the talking that we're doing has a negative side to it. And that's that we're doing a lot of authentic communication, and then what's happening is that, let's say that there's 5 layers of conversation, and each time that you're talking with somebody, you're saying things like, again, yesterday we go to the marjan and we pick up some things.
Yeah.
We pick up some grocery.
Yeah.
Right? So you're making like subject and verb problems. You're taking like a plural subject, for example, and then you've got a singular verb. And because the conversation is fun, you're making these mistakes part of your happiness. They didn't say that he didn't say specifically how, but we do know that from neuroscientists that when we solve problems, and maybe each conversation is solving a problem, you say something to me, I figure out what you're saying, I say something to you, that's what makes it fun. Each time you solve any kind of problem, your brain releases a little bit of dopamine. Right? It's kind of like your little reward chemical. So imagine that you're having this really fun conversation, and it's getting you like totally hyped up. But you're making mistakes now that are not going to get out if you keep doing it. So the teacher who is providing, like myself, I'm guilty of this, providing these authentic communication environments, we're also at risk if we don't find a creative way to get that error correction going constantly. It has to be kind of a constant thing. Or you get to an advanced level and the problems are all still there. So I have to think about that as a teacher. If I'm going to improve in any way, I have to take that advice seriously. And I don't think I thought about it that way before. Honestly, I didn't. I remember at CELTA being told, like, while people are talking, don't interrupt them, don't do this. But I think I have to find some way, maybe not interrupting them, but making it like, their mistakes are immediately visible somewhere in the room. More visible than I normally make them.
Yeah, I studied in subject of pragmatic. That it's bad to interrupt students and say that he's doing a mistake and correct that. But another way, try to say it in a good way and till the end, then correct. And or also, if I'm saying something, you will say what I've said in another way. Then in your speech, you correct my mistake.
Sure.
I think it's a good idea. Not to interrupt.
Sure. Well, if this is true, this is kind of what I do already. But if what Jack C. Richards is saying is true, combined with that whole neuroscience thing, there might be something to the expression that we need to strike while the iron is hot.
Yes.
Right? While that metal is still kind of flexible and stuff, before it cools down and becomes like a pipe or a sword or whatever, we have to change that. And you can't stop the class. Conversation sometimes goes on for 10 minutes.
Yes.
You're not going to be like, oh, hold on, I'm going to write this on the board or whatever. It's tricky.
Yeah.
It's tricky. It's tricky. But if a person's going to be a teacher, then they can't just be like, oh, let's just have a conversation. Who cares?
Yes.
It's at that point, it's just we can just go down to a local disco and do that.
So, have you yet started applying those techniques with your classes? And if yes, how would that make you different from before before that?
Yeah, that's a good question too. Well, I've only taught 2 classes so far since I've returned. I had my Tuesday, well, I suppose three classes. What am I doing differently? My lesson plans are more detailed right now. But that's also as a result of the American Language Center wanting to have a better idea of what my system is, like what are my plans. So that's good for me. That has less to do with the conference though. And there was a guy at the conference who told me it's a good thing to have your plans really tight. I think I'm using the polling software more already, like Socrative. That's one thing I'm definitely doing that's different. I think I started it before I left, but I never really did anything with it. And now I'm trying to make short quizzes and surveys that people fill out, so that the days that I don't see people, they'll be busy and reviewing things.
Yeah.
I would like to see people improve. Like my goal right now as a teacher for this next session is to see people who normally score like maybe 75s to at least get them up like 3 points. It's not going to be possible to get them to an 85. I can shoot for that, I can try. But I think even to make like small improvements in all of my students, I'd love to be able to do that. Because normally it never happens. Ever. For everything that I do, the students perform almost the exact same way each time. Even you. It's like, wow, I really love this class. Let's see how she did. She did the same as she did, like that. Exactly. And people like you just as much as I like you. And they write nice things about you. Nobody said, oh God, can somebody dig a giant hole and put waffle? Nobody ever said that about you. So generally, what you get at the ALC is the same student, which is a good thing. But I think for the people who are kind of trying to get out of a rut, we'll say that this kind of student is not going to be a happy student. Students that are scoring between 70 and 80 are not happy. If you have 10 of those students in a class, it's generally an unhappy class. You're not going to have fun, they're not going to have fun. They're struggling, you're struggling. They're wondering where their phones are, You're probably also wondering where your phone is,
They keep the same throughout presumably the whole year, but they need to change.
Well, it's hard though for them to change because they're missing maybe some habits in learning English, and that talking to you makes me realize that it's like, what habits are they missing? Which ones should be there? What things should we come to expect out of a student that they do outside of class that's not connected to English at all? What do we know about language learning? What do we know? That's something that I should have an answer for. For example, how many minutes a day would make it so that they would perform better in class? I should have an answer for that, but I don't. I'm sure that somebody knows, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I can just Google it right now. How often should you be practicing in order to be able to return to a class and feel like I'm confident? Which brings me to another thing they taught us, which is that you shouldn't teach vocabulary. And normally we do teach vocabulary. And they said, give the students the paper, let them go home, figure it out. The first definition, so that when they come back to class, everybody has something to say about what they learned. And it's just a more interesting use of class time than just like, okay, what is the word? Mellifluous.
Like, who were the guys there? Those running the conference, were they like professionals in teaching, or?
This is the first time he's ever asked me about guys, by the way. It's almost always about girls. So I'm really happy to answer this question from you. I was kind of waiting for the girls' question, actually. What are girls like in Toronto? Yeah, okay, so your question about guys is what?
Yeah, like.
What kind of teachers were there?
Like, yeah, I mean, like, professionals in teaching.
Well, that's funny. I think that there's an atmosphere of despair. It kind of feels like a casino, just like that. I think a lot of people, because there are so many. These are the classes that you have to choose from. Look at this. I mean, and they're all going on at the same time. This is all happening within a 2 or 3 day period. That just here. So it's really like you're just throwing the dice. And what they tell you is like you have to choose 3 different classes, because if you're in a bad one, run away and go get the other one. And if that one's bad too, go run to another one. So again, it has that kind of like gambling atmosphere. I think just teachers in general never feel 100% secure with their lives, with their jobs. Technology is really changing the face of it so much. And so is that kind of what you're asking? What were the other teachers like? Well, they're all different. You had some people that seemed like they were just born yesterday, and you had other people that looked like they're ready to check out. Flesh falling off and bones sticking out, and just practically dead. And then somewhere close to that, like old people like me, and then slightly younger people. So everyone you can imagine.
So what are the differences between the Moroccan teachers and the teachers you saw there? I mean, not Moroccans. You've been teaching here a long time.
Oh. Well, I didn't see any Moroccan. I see what you're saying. What's the difference between the teachers that I saw wandering around?
Yes.
Maybe the way of teaching.
The methodologies.
Well, it seems a lot easier to teach here than I don't know what other teachers do, but when I was talking to teachers, for example, who teach at grade school in the United States, or high school in the United States, or English at university, they were using a language that I simply didn't understand. I didn't even pretend to understand. Like I would meet teachers who were teaching people who have never learned any language before. They were learning English for the first time at 16. And they're like inner city kids. And they were using a highly technical language that I'm not familiar with. So if I was going to compare teachers, for example, in the United States that I talk to teachers here, it just seems like it's much more difficult to follow all of the rules, and there's a lot of government and policy rules that they have to think about too. But maybe I'm wrong. I could be totally wrong. I don't know enough about the way that the government of the school is constructed. But it seems a little bit simpler here. There's a lot, again, I could be totally wrong, but it seems like there's a lot more accountability between classes. Like, each teacher has a very good idea what the last teacher did. Whereas I could say that I'm not really aware what any other teacher has done. And I don't think they know what I've done either.
Like, for example, like, do you see it as a good idea to, for example, like, when you have your students just take your class, you ask them about what happened before your class, and then you can build on that, or you start on, you have like your own way of doing it?
I don't understand your question.
Like, for example, like, do you see it as a good idea to take on where your other teachers left off?
Sure. Yeah, but just like we were saying with the research idea, I think research is just a healthy feature of being a human being. It doesn't have anything to do with being a teacher necessarily. I mean, you observe things and then you act on those observations. And if you don't act on those observations, life is probably going to be very short for you. You're not going to, you'll just get hit by the next car because you just decided it's like, okay, you didn't learn the first time that you stepped into the street and the person almost hit you that was a bad thing. So you're just waiting to get hit. So the same goes for me. I see teachers doing things and they're sharing interesting ideas. Sometimes it's like they're suggesting something, and then you're like, oh, that's cool, and you get a new idea that's not exactly what they said, but it's what you understood. You know? Like their idea was really complicated, and maybe you didn't understand it, but you understood something totally different, which was also cool. So it would be like talking to Einstein, and then he's finished telling you about the theory of relativity, and then you go and make a movie about a clown or something. It's like, but it's this great movie about a clown. It's like, what's the connection? It's like, I don't know. I just felt like there was a connection. It's my clown movie, and I like it. It's like my lesson plans now. I think every teacher whose lecture I attended, these guys were at least 10 times more professional than I am. I think. The way that they would do their PowerPoint, they were like referring to about 3 or 4 different authors all the time. It was like real professional stuff. For me, it's just like a rodeo, one of those things where the guys just ride a horse or something like that. Woo!
Well, Jamal, the other thing I would like to ask you about is, I'm sure that as a teacher, you had some expectations before going to the conference, as you had for the conference. Were those expectations met?
Unfortunately, yes. Unfortunately, yes. There are some elements of conferences in general which I think need an overhaul. They need to be improved. The one is the idea that PowerPoint is effective. I don't believe that it is. It seems to just, most of the time, it's just a distraction. They've got these giant clips of stuff on the board. Sometimes it's not long enough. Sometimes it's too long. Either way, the person doesn't really need to read it to us. They'll say something like, this is the PowerPoint in the back of the room, and the person clicks it and says, National Geographic Learning is proud to announce a new partnership with TED in English language teaching. Click, and they go to the next slide. Crossing borders, building bridges. They just keep reading right off of the PowerPoint. Okay. Next slide will be something like, Jimmy drinks a glass of water. How many glasses of water did Jimmy drink?
3 plus 2.
1? Yes. But it's worse than that because they're not even asking you how many glasses. They have the question on the board. How many glasses did he drink? Click. 1. Yes. And then the student says the word yes. And thank you. Up on the thing. Every single thing. So I'd say PowerPoint, maybe they just need PowerPoint lessons or something that'll make it more fun. 2, too much. There's just too much. And too much, and it's not organized in a way that any teacher knows whether it's for them or not. A good example of that is if I am going to a class where they're teaching you about collaborative learning, which seems general and useful, like maybe the 4 of us complete a project together, competing against time rather than each other. This is a feature maybe of a collectivist society rather than an individualistic one. Okay, so that might be an interesting thing. But if you're a person who is teaching the 16-year-old refugees who have never seen English before, and I'm teaching students that won't even be accepted if they can't read or write, we have 2 totally different classes, and we have to walk away from that lecture with 2 totally different things. So it's often like 10 or 20 minutes into one of these things that you realize this lecture is not for you. So I think they need to spend more time figuring out who the target teachers are for a specific lecture, rather than just making it like suqal-had, and having that big mountain of clothes, and just standing in front of the mountain of clothes and being like, Durham, 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 legacy of learning, Durham, textography, the analysis of Colombian art history, Colombian art historian's thesis writing, Durham, right? Adding extensive reading to the IEP curriculum, Durham, it's like it's all on the same page right next to each other. It's like, it's like the Mona Lisa, Bugs Bunny, and Friends. It's like they're all showing at the exact same time. Which one? Hey, have all 3, It's like a little bit of Friends, a little bit of Fast and Furious, a couple cartoons. We dress up like Tom and Jerry. We go home. It's just it has the kind of it doesn't feel focused, and at a time that we really kind of need some focus.
Jamal, do you see fun as a good tool in teaching?
Well, again, I think there's that double-edged sword again. It's like what we were talking about before regarding mistakes crawling in while you're having fun, So I think fun is a lot like nitroglycerin, I suppose, or some kind of volatile chemical that can explode if you don't handle it properly. You can become addicted to it. And I suppose that's a good thing as long as while you're addicted to it, you're getting stronger. And I think one thing that it often confuses my students is that, especially in the first few days, it's like, oh, this is really fun, And then as it's going on, they're like, I'm not passing this class. And they start to realize that it's like, it hasn't all been fun. You're supposed to be working during that time, and they're not. And they're still like, yeah, it's the cool teacher, but it starts changing a lot to it's the aggressive, weird teacher. Why is this? Why, if we're having fun, am I not passing? And so that's a problem that I have to solve. I think the thing is that I'm probably missing a lot of activities where I could be drilling somebody or insisting that they drill the mistakes that they make out while everyone else does something else to help those students pass. We had a student in our class who was friendly. I found him to be very friendly. And he seemed to enjoy the class. I don't think he passed. One of the students in our class. Yeah, I think he passed? No, he didn't pass. Right? And he just did horrible on his final exam. Most of his quizzes he did really poorly on. But I think that at the class time, it was always just like, he's talking, as if that was going to be enough. And I was giving him outside assignments to do. and which he never did.
Yeah. Just for the final assignments.
Well, I think because he thought that was going to change everything.
Just the final assignments.
I mean, and it did. I think it improved his participation grade. No, but it didn't help him. So the extreme of that is that a teacher can now say, you see what happens? You're just having fun and people fail. Well, it's like, that's not really everything that happened. So they go to the other extreme and they say, these students should just be in their desks, not going outside, not doing this, not talking to a billion different people. They should just be sitting and drilling and drilling and drilling. And their argument is that they're not getting better through what it is
have
they're
to
doing.
see just those kind of students. See the other ones who are succeeding or not make it with fun.
Sure, but I think they'd say, but those same students that are scoring high would have scored high in anybody's class.
Mm-hmm.
That it wasn't necessary, that it didn't improve things.
But those students, like, if you talk with them, they will not talk with you because they are just always studying with the book and not talking.
Which ones?
A lot of them.
A lot.
Which ones specifically?
So many.
Yeah.
So whenever you're like doing activities of talking, you will see that everything in their mind will go out. So they need talking. It is just not for studying with the book and staying on chairs.
Sure. Yeah, well, that's an excellent point too. I mean, the thing is when I went to the conference and I'm watching other teachers, they're sitting there like in their chairs.
Yeah.
Now they're the ones just sitting in their chairs, like sitting, kind of like rocking, trying to get comfortable.
Yeah.
So, and also like texting people. It was funny. They're sitting and texting. I wasn't just taking notes. They're texting their friends and their family and stuff like that. And so that, if this is what teachers are doing, then why would we expect our students to not also be bored and be distracted because they're so bored? Again, balance and policy, research, and scientific principles should be the things that guide the teacher's decisions in the class. If the teacher's not making those types of decisions, of course with student feedback and also student creativity as well, then he's not really doing anything except babysitting. Because students who get 90s are always going to get 90s no matter how good or bad the teacher is. And students who get 70s generally get 70s no matter what the teacher's doing. I'd like to change that. I think it's a good goal, and I think it might be possible. I'm not 100% sure. I think it might be unreasonable that we can make a big difference in anything except a new regime of learning, self-learning. That's all. Really, if you look at it this way, it's like you're going to take a person from a 70 to a 95. That's about as realistic thinking as going from, let's say, 50 kilos to 100 kilos of pure muscle in the same amount of time, of just like an hour a week or an hour, the same way you are simply not going to get into the best shape of your life in that same small amount of time. You can't expect that you're also going to go from like an average student to the best student in the world. So the teachers need to be realistic about that too. And students and teachers, right?
No, it's the duty of both.
It really has the feeling of it. And I think people who believe in the promise of that kind of sudden change are the same people who are disappointed with things on the internet like learn French in 24 hours. And I say, oh, I just spent $9,000 on that, and I can't believe it, but I don't know French. But really, even after they promised, yeah, they promised me. The internet people.
Yeah, also.
My best friend.
They're learning French.
Yeah, learning
without a teacher.
Without a teacher, sure.
The spelling is bad.
And even, the promises in the advertisements are bad. Yep, there we go. Hold on. Boop, 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 boop. So, boop. Okay, we're still on.
The spelling is totally good.
Yeah, the spelling, exactly.
A word is Arabic.
Learn you English good. Week 1. Why not?
And you write in English in Arabic.
Yeah.
Kind of English with Arabic. I don't know, like good with Arabic words. Food. Or a teacher. Teacher.
Yeah.
Well, sure, but I mean, this is the kind of thing that these are the kind of forces, economic forces, which affect teaching and affect teachers and affect teachers' decisions, right? So if you ever wondered if ethics and morals can be affected by money, well, we all know that it's true. This is an example of promises that the internet makes, promises that the speed of society makes overnight, 1 week, 2 weeks to instant success. These types of things are out there, and when a student is spending 1,300 dirhams on their education, they're thinking, you are promising me something. And I think the promises have to be really reasonable promises, or you're just going to have a lot of unhappy people. And if they're not unhappy with you, the other sad thing is that they're going to be unhappy with themselves, like, for example, maybe Yasmin.
Yes.
Being an example of being unhappy with himself and with me, maybe. And he shouldn't be upset with anything except the fact that he's in the wrong level. And if we take him and we put him in the right level, he'll feel much better. Yeah.
So does the applicability of the techniques you have learned there depend on the number of students?
Does the what? Depend on the what?
Does the applicability of those like techniques does the applicability depend on the number of students, for example?
Yes. Yes, it definitely does depend on the number of students. The kind of things, for example, that we might do in a giant class don't make any sense. So I'll really have to develop a lesson plan that you'd almost like a sculptor would call it site-specific sculpting. You're building a sculpture, but you're not doing it and then just selling it to anybody. You're building that sculpture with the idea of like what kind of surface are you going to use to reflect the world around it? Will it be, are you in a country where the skies are always blue? Maybe you're going to want to have the surface of that sculpture like radiating light. Or maybe you're not, and you're going to want to use kind of a dull, matted, absorbent surface that doesn't reflect a lot of light so people can look at the details of your sculpture. And the same thing with lesson planning. If I have 7 students in a smallish room, then I really have to think totally differently for a group of 25 students in a giant room. Does that answer your question? You're out of questions? You give up? Any final questions about Toronto? You didn't even really ask about the classes, did you? Well, I told you about the research thing. That's about it. So you guys, I have defeated you. This is who made from before I left. She told me to take this with me. And I don't want to take it. Here's the research paper. You guys can look at that for a second. And Jamal wins. I had 3 journalists attack me.
But they all run out of questions.
They ran out of questions, and I never run out of answers. Yes, and I'm never depleted. Here's the thing on individualism and collectivism. Here's another one. If you want to look at that thing that we were talking about before. And here's the exercise that we did. We put a screwdriver together. The problem here, too, is that they didn't use proper English here either. Not, like in some of these things, this was okay. You know, the product is a bolt with 3 washers and a nut. Nut holds the washers. Not the nut, but nut holds the washers. Things like that. I can type washers on bolts. Like sometimes it would have the definite article. Sometimes they forget to write it. So the quality of every activity was sketchy sometimes. You could still find something useful in it, but for English teachers, they didn't hold themselves to like this exacting standard in the presence of other English teachers, which I thought was a little shocking too. It's like your proposal is accepted. My friend and I, what we did, a guy that I really respect, he's a teacher at the American Language Center in Casablanca, Joel Hansen, fantastic teacher, crazy, really just great thinker. He and I were looking at these proposals, and we realized that it's like building bridges. It appears like over and over and over again. They keep talking about building bridges. So there's a language that you use to get your proposal accepted. But I think once you get your proposal accepted, it's just kind of like, okay, and then, you know, I don't have to do anything now except get that PowerPoint thing going. Crossing borders.
Building bridge.
Building bridges. Click. Program book.
Yeah.
TESOL.
TESOL. Click. International. Click.
Yeah. Thank you.
So that would be my other criticism, is that they need to spend less time on their proposals, or that they have to submit a video of their presentation rather than just write a 30-word thing that is really exciting. You know, like they write exciting proposals and they push all the buttons, talking, flipping the classroom, and all of the technology that's going to be used in it. And then they get accepted, and organizations look different. The other thing you didn't ask me about, but now that I am in charge, I'm taking over. This is what happens. Is this? Have a look. This is a way to grade people speaking, which I wanted to do for a long time. And what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to apply to become a certified speaking rater, so that my students will feel confident being graded by me in a way that they won't feel like, oh, that was subjective or whatever, or that feels like this. It's like, no, Jamal's a professional ELT rater. And then I can give people grades based on their past. This is the rubric. This is what you use to grade a speaker. The other thing I learned about was Airbnb. So anyone who's watching our video, this is the letter from the people that I stayed with at Airbnb, Daz and Leland. They were nice. It's called Airbnb. And it's brilliant. If you're ever traveling anywhere, in Morocco even for vacation, get your credit card ready, go online. You can find houses to rent. Well, people do this anyway. But you can find beautiful houses to rent for really cheap. And because it's not official, like pretty much everything that we do here, the prices are better. Airbnb, yeah. Now you have to have a credit card or you can't do it, or somebody you know has. Okay, you want to say goodbye to me now? Stop this. Okay, we'll stop. You want to say goodbye to me? Bye, Jamal.
Thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thanks for spontaneously coming up with this idea. This is my great-great-great-grandfather's marriage certificate from 1879.
Oh.
Okay, let me go ahead and stop this.